Turn the other cheek. Four words that have been twisted, misquoted, and weaponized for 2,000 years to keep people silent, submissive, and small. But what if Jesus never meant what you think he meant? What if this verse, the one people throw at you when you dare to stand up for yourself, was actually one of the most subversive, radical teachings ever spoken? Not passive, but radical. Because when you understand the language, the culture, and the raw power dynamics of first-century Roman Palestine, everything you were taught about this verse collapses. Today, I am going to show you what Jesus really meant, and it has nothing to do with being a doormat. Nothing. For centuries, churches, parents, and well-meaning people have used this one verse to shut down any form of resistance. Someone wrongs you, turn the other cheek. Someone disrespects you, turn the other cheek. Someone takes advantage of you, just turn the other cheek and pray about it. This interpretation has done more damage than most people realize. It created generations of believers who confuse godliness with passivity, who think that being Christ-like means being walked over, walked on, walked through. As Dietrich Bonhoeffer once warned, silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. The problem is not the teaching itself. The problem is that we have been reading a first-century Middle Eastern text through modern Western eyes. Lost in translation, we stripped away the context, the culture, and the original Hebrew thought. And in doing so, we turned one of the most powerful revolutionary teachings in human history into a theology of doormat submission. But what if the key to understanding this entire passage lies in one tiny detail that almost everyone completely overlooks? Here is where it gets truly fascinating. Let us read the actual words of Jesus from Matthew chapter 5, verse 39. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. Now most people hear that and think, just take the hit, do not fight back. But notice something critical that nearly everyone misses. Jesus did not just say cheek, right cheek. He specifically said the right cheek. Why does that matter? Because in first-century Jewish and Roman culture, the left hand was considered unclean. It was reserved for unsanitary purposes. You would never use your left hand to strike another person. So if someone hits your right cheek with their right hand, think about the geometry for just a moment. The only way to strike someone's right cheek with your right hand is with the back of your hand. A backhand. Backhand strike. And a backhanded strike in the ancient world was not a fight. It was not combat between equals. It was something far more deliberate, far more calculated. And when you truly understand what it signified, this passage will never read the same way again. In the Roman Empire, a backhanded slap was a very specific gesture with a very specific purpose. It was the way a master struck a slave, the way a Roman soldier struck a Jew, the way a husband struck a wife, the way a parent disciplined a child. It was never about inflicting physical pain. It was about asserting total dominance, a calculated tool of humiliation designed to remind you of your place in the social order. The backhand communicated without words, "You are beneath me. You are not my equal. You are nothing." The Mishnah, an ancient collection of Jewish rabbinic law, actually confirms this. It prescribed specific monetary fines for striking someone, and the fine for a backhanded slap was double the fine for a regular open-handed strike. Double the fine. Why double? Because the backhand was not just violence. As the scholar Richard Rohr put it, a backhand slap was not an act of violence. It was a ritual of degradation. It was a public declaration that you were property, not a person. So now picture this scene with fresh eyes. A powerful man backhands someone he considers beneath him, and Jesus says, "Turn the other cheek." But which other cheek? The left cheek. The left. And this changes absolutely everything. If the person who was struck turns and offers their left cheek to the aggressor, something revolutionary happens. The aggressor can no longer use a backhand. No more backhand. Think about it carefully. To strike the left cheek with the right hand, you would have to use either a fist or an open palm. And here is the crucial detail that unlocks this entire teaching. In first-century culture, a fist or an open-handed slap was reserved for fighting an equal. Masters backhanded inferiors, but peers fought face to face. By turning the other cheek, you force your oppressor to treat you as an equal. You are not lying down. You are not running away. You are not even fighting back. You are standing there, looking them directly in the eye and declaring without a single word, "Try that again, but this time you will have to acknowledge that I am a human being just like you." As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The non-violent resister does not seek to humiliate the opponent, but to win his friendship and understanding." If this truth from Scripture is opening your eyes, hit like and subscribe for more biblical wisdom that transforms. Because Jesus was not done. He gave 2 more examples that were even more subversive. Jesus did not stop at turning the other cheek. He went further. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Now here is the context that most people completely miss. Under Roman military law, a soldier could legally compel any civilian in occupied territory to carry his military pack for exactly 1 mile. Not a single step more. 1 mile was the absolute legal limit under Roman military occupation. This practice was called impressment, and it was one of the most despised aspects of living under Roman rule. But here is the genius of what Jesus was teaching. If a soldier forced a civilian to carry his pack beyond 1 mile, that soldier faced severe military punishment. Roman discipline was brutal and exacting. Centurions who violated regulations could be flogged, demoted, or worse. His own rules against him. So imagine the scene. A Roman soldier orders you to carry his heavy military pack. You obey, you walk 1 mile, and then you keep walking. Suddenly, the soldier is panicking. He is begging you to give his pack back because now he is the one in trouble. The oppressed person holds the power. The entire dynamic has flipped completely upside down. And Jesus had one more example that might be the most shocking of all. Then Jesus drops another revelation. If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. In ancient Palestine, the poorest people owned exactly 2 garments, an inner tunic and an outer cloak. Creditors could seize your tunic as collateral for a debt, but the Torah explicitly forbade taking your cloak because it was often your only source of warmth at night. So what is Jesus actually saying here? If someone takes your inner garment in court, give them your outer garment too. Strip down, stand there with absolutely nothing, naked in open court. Now in Jewish culture, this is where it becomes brilliant. Nakedness did not shame the person exposed. It shamed the person who witnessed it and caused it. The one who caused the nakedness bore the shame, not the naked person. By stripping down, you are holding up a mirror to the entire system. You are saying, look at what your greed has done. Look at what your justice has created. A human being with nothing left to give. This was not surrender. This was prophetic theater at its most powerful. And together, these 3 teachings reveal something that terrified the greatest empire in human history. Now step back and see the full picture. Why would Jesus teach this way? Because he understood something that most people in his time, and frankly most people today, still do not grasp. Violent resistance against Rome was suicide. The Jewish zealots tried armed rebellion, and in 70 AD Rome burned Jerusalem to the ground and destroyed the temple forever. But complete passive submission meant accepting your own dehumanization, accepting that you were less than human, accepting that this was your permanent place in the world. Jesus offered a revolutionary 3rd way, not violent resistance and not passive submission, but creative non-violent defiance. And this terrified the powerful far more than any sword ever could. As theologian Walter Wink brilliantly explained, Jesus did not tell his followers to submit to evil, but to refuse to oppose it on its own terms. When you fight with violence, the powerful always win because they have the armies. When you submit in silence, the powerful still win because nothing changes. Dignity defeats empires. But when you stand with dignity and expose injustice without becoming unjust yourself, you strip away the moral authority of the oppressor. Exposed. And that made Jesus the most dangerous man who ever walked the earth. But this strategy did not die with him. Nearly 2,000 years after Jesus spoke those words on a hillside in Galilee, a Hindu lawyer in India read the Sermon on the Mount and recognized the strategy instantly. His name was Mohandas Gandhi. The moment the slave resolves that he will no longer be a slave, his fetters fall. Gandhi took the very principles Jesus taught about non-violent resistance and aimed them straight at the British Empire. The Salt March, the spinning wheel movement, the hunger strikes. Every single act was a variation of turning the other cheek, creative, dignified defiance that exposed the immorality of the oppressor. Then in 1955, a Baptist preacher from Atlanta named Martin Luther King Jr. picked up the exact same playbook. Sit-ins, marches, freedom. The lunch counter sit-ins, the freedom rides, the march from Selma to Montgomery. What were all of those? They were turning the other cheek on a massive, historic scale. When police turned fire hoses and attacked dogs on peaceful protesters in Birmingham, and the world saw it on television, the moral authority of segregation collapsed. Not through bullets, through exactly what Jesus prescribed 2 millennia earlier. And this reveals something most people desperately need to understand about true strength. Here is where the biggest misconception lies. People here turn the other cheek and immediately think weakness, passivity, cowardice, being a doormat for the world to wipe its feet on. But that is the exact opposite of what Jesus was teaching. Think about the raw courage this actually requires. To be struck by someone more powerful than you and choose not to strike back. To stand your ground without raising a fist. To look your oppressor dead in the eye and say through your very posture, I refuse to become what you are. True strength is not the absence of restraint, but the mastery of it. Anyone can throw a punch. That takes nothing but impulse and adrenaline. But to absorb a blow, maintain your composure, and force the other person to confront their own cruelty, that requires more inner strength than most people will ever possess. The Apostle Paul understood this perfectly when he wrote, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." Overcome evil with good. This is not passive. This is the most active, most intentional, most strategic form of resistance ever conceived. So the question that matters most, how does this ancient teaching apply to your life right now? You may not live under Roman occupation. You may not face the brutality of first-century Palestine, but you face your own backhanded slaps every single day. The boss who belittles you to assert dominance in front of colleagues. The family member who dismisses you like your voice means nothing. The system that whispers, know your place, know your place. And in those moments, you have exactly 3 choices. You can fight fire with fire and become the very thing that wounded you. You can shrink down, accept the humiliation, and slowly lose yourself piece by piece. Or you can do what Jesus taught 2,000 years ago. Stand tall, look them in the eye, refuse to be dehumanized, and force the world to see you for who you truly are, a person made in the image of God, carrying a dignity that no one on this earth can strip away. As Jesus himself declared, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." And the word meek in the original Greek, praus, does not mean weak. It means power under perfect control, like a warhorse trained for battle, fierce but disciplined. That is what Jesus calls you to be. If you made it this far, comment left cheek if this teaching changed how you understand the words of Jesus. 1. Stand with dignity, not violence. 2. Expose injustice without becoming unjust. 3. Force the world to see your God-given humanity. Stay in the Word, stay in the Spirit, and watch what God does. Jesus never taught passivity. He taught the most revolutionary, most subversive, and most powerful form of resistance the world has ever known. Word, spirit, power. And 2,000 years later, it still changes everything.